Hey everybody, my name is Daniel Matei. Today we're going to be talking about filming epic B-roll in Monument Valley. In case we are just meeting, my name is Daniel Matei. Once again, I'm a director and filmmaker living in Los Angeles, California with my wife Grace and our dog Couscous. We actually just moved to Los Angeles in the past couple months from Phoenix, Arizona. But first, there had been a number of locations on our bucket list that we had wanted to see and visit. These are all relatively close to Phoenix and we hadn't visited them yet. And we thought if we move to LA even farther, it's even less likely that we're gonna visit. So before we move, it's a prime time to visit these spots and check them out. You should also know Grace is a full-time content creator on Instagram and I am her photographer. You can check her work out in the description and maybe I'll put a link up here. So we decided to do a road trip, and anytime we travel, it's a prime opportunity for Grace to get great content for her brand and for me to get video content as well. Grace had some bridal campaigns that she was doing for her work, so we got some really cool photos that I'm very proud of. And we got some very epic B-roll in places like Horseshoe Bend, Monument Valley, and finally, White Sands, New Mexico.
I was waiting in the undertow, and I was waiting in the undertow. Set adrift and fell away like bones, unaware of where my heart would flow. I was waiting in the undertow, and I was dreaming of the love I fell asleep within an autumn flow. I never knew I drove so far from home, while I was waiting in the undertow.
Alright, so there it is. I hope you enjoyed it. But I want to talk about some run and gun cinematography tips, and I want to talk about shooting epic B-roll in general. So my first point is actually how important location is for your B-roll. The problem with this topic and my first point in general is that we are currently in the middle of the COVID-19 coronavirus situation. And if you are anything like me, you guys have been staying at home, so I hope that you are healthy, and thank you for looking out for the general welfare of everyone around you. But hopefully that footage doesn't bum you out too much. Hopefully it gets you excited for when this situation passes. So we may not be able to travel now, but in the future, when you are planning your next great American road trip, I would definitely recommend that you search on Google Maps, look on websites for really great locations that people suggest. These kind of vibey moments that happen in a national park like this one, those are the kind of shots that end up in your reel or on stock sites that can make you money. You should be aware that you usually have to pay something to get into a national park. Also, Monument Valley, Horseshoe Bend, Antelope Canyon are on Native American land, Navajo Nation. So you have to pay them to get in, but honestly, I was more than happy to pay and support them. I was excited to be around those people and just get to know some of them, hear their stories. We met one husband and wife that were so nice. They actually let Grace borrow an elegant turquoise necklace that they had crafted so that we could shoot photos with it. You should also be aware that if you're doing anything commercially like we were for Grace's bridal campaigns, then you do have to pay for a permit. But again, we were more than happy to pay. We wanted to make sure that we were being respectful of anything that they required, as well as to not step on any toes. But we felt so welcome there, and it was just so cool to be around the culture and to get to know some of the people. And that moment with the necklace was really special. It's worth it to invest some money and time in national parks and different things like that, because location really does matter.
Breaking my heart.
I love having a ton of options, but when you're traveling and on the go, it's honestly, I think, better to have minimal options. Less is more. I think a lot of lens options can be a bit distracting, especially when you're run and gun. It can really interrupt your workflow if you're constantly changing your lens. So I tried to stick to one zoom and one prime and make my life really easy. I really enjoy shooting as wide as possible, especially when you're in a great landscape like that. So I would highly suggest a 12mm or a 16mm. I really love Canon's 16-35 lens. I think it's a beautiful choice. I primarily shot with the 2 series, but I've heard that the 3 series is sharp as a tack, even around the edges. So I can use a choice like that and get my wides and maybe some medium shots, and then I'm looking for something close up. You can go with another zoom, like a 24-70 or a 70-200, or I like to go with a prime, like a 50mm or an 85mm. For the photography, we had a Canon setup, so the 5D Mark III as well as Canon's 16-35mm. I shot a little bit of video on that, but that was primarily for the photos. And then for my video, I was shooting on my Panasonic GH5 with the Sigma 18-35 and then my prime 50mm. In general, you see those 2 lenses for that video. A nice zoom for some flexibility, 18 for some wides, and a 35 for a medium close-up, and then I had my 50mm prime for the nice tight shots. I do think it's easier to have minimal setup, especially for run and gun. I would stick to 1 zoom and 1 prime and make your life easy. I truly think that the more that you work with cameras, whether it's photography or filming, the better you'll get at thinking on your feet. It's nice to be able to scout, but I also think it's great practice to think on your feet and show up at a location and just start shooting. A lot of times sunlight will dictate which direction you're shooting in or what angle you choose, and a lot of times the location will dictate how you shoot. I think what's important is just to keep shooting and finding those moments as you work. In that same vein, take advantage of available light. I used to really dislike direct sunlight because it flattens out the image a lot, but depending on where you move or how you place the subject, you could go for a really high-key, high-fashion look. Or you can use direct sunlight behind your subject for great backlight, and a lot of times that direct sunlight can really bring out the details in your image. I guess what I'm saying here is to take advantage of the light you're given and start to learn how to work with the light. In Monument Valley, there was very little cloud coverage, and in White Sands, the sand below you reflected the sunlight, so you had very little shadow and definition. But the longer we shot there, the more the light changed, so it was worth it to keep working with the light and keep trying. If you're not getting anything with direct sunlight, wait a while. In a few moments, you might get cloud coverage, or golden hour. In White Sands, we had a beautiful golden hour sunset. The sky turned purple and then pink in sort of a rainbow stripe. It was gorgeous. And in Horseshoe Bend, we ran out of light very quickly. Cloud coverage was a lot more thick that night, so golden hour only lasted a few minutes and very quickly turned to blue hour.
All right, baby, we in Utah, yeah! Let's be honest, have you ever really lived in the desert if you haven't played with an actual tumbleweed? Bam! Bye!
No,
It's cold!
it's f***ing cold.
No matter what, I think it's worth it to shoot as much as you can. There's always a clip or two that you'll be able to find that you'll be thankful that you took, and I just think it's great practice to work with the available light that you're given. I brought a tripod as well as a gimbal to all 3 of these locations, but I quickly realized I didn't want to keep weighing myself down. The parking lot for Horseshoe Bend is a good 10-minute walk away from the actual location. So Grace and I were lugging quite a bit of stuff out there. In the same instance, if you want to find a good spot in White Sands without any other tourists nearby, then you have to hike a little bit. In Monument Valley, you drove through to get to each location, but even still, I think it's better to pack light. So if you want a static shot, bring your tripod. If you want movement, bring your gimbal. But I eventually just shot handheld. Alongside getting a lot of different coverage, I also like to get a variety of frame rates. The majority of this B-roll is slow motion, which I always think looks great. But I also think you can add a lot of excitement by shooting in real time 24 frames a second. This also becomes a necessity based on your light. When I'm shooting at a higher frame rate, like 120 frames per second, I'm doubling that number with my shutter speed, which means my camera's seeing a lot less light. So slow motion is a nice cheat if you don't have something like an ND filter or a variable ND filter. Once it became blue hour at Horseshoe Bend, my only other option was increasing ISO, which after a point adds a lot of noise or grain to the footage. At that point, I take my frame rate back to 24 frames a second, I double that number with my shutter speed, and now my camera can take in a lot more light without increasing the ISO at all. Either way, I think it's great to have a variety of frame rates to add some excitement and life to your B-roll footage. So those are my quick tips for getting epic B-roll in places like Monument Valley, Antelope Canyon, Horseshoe Bend, and White Sands, New Mexico. If there's one takeaway from this, it's don't stop playing, don't stop experimenting, and don't stop shooting. It's not like you're shooting on film. We are shooting with digital cameras on digital cards, so you don't have to worry about spending all sorts of money on film. If you're in an epic location like one of these, it is so worth it to just keep on shooting, keep experimenting until you get something that you like. Shoot until you run out of battery, shoot until you run out of space on your card, and if you run out of light, shoot a time lapse of the stars. If you want to be a better camera operator or even just a good hobbyist, these are the moments to take advantage of. And since this coronavirus situation, I have noticed a lot of B-roll challenges that are indoors or at home, and I think that is a great idea. So don't let this situation stop you. Good luck with your future epic B-roll compilations. And if you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe. I will see you soon.